I want to go back to the childhood business.
Okay.
The number one, when you put that up there, and of course, as a counselor, I've rummaged around both in my own childhood as well as other people's childhoods all my career, because that's where it all starts. And everybody has to work through what I call the FOO issues, family of origin, because that's where it all starts. And mine was chaos. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but it was just a very chaotic home. Divorces and fighting and belligerence and my older brother's chaos. He was 6 years older than me. He was in and out of institutions, criminal justice type institutions, and all the way up through in his 20s, actually. So it was creating a lot of chaos in the family. It wasn't just him, it was all kinds of stuff. But I want to pick it up when I was 17, because that was a very pivotal year in my life, and it leads into a segue here. When I was 17, I was intense, outspoken, a troublemaker, but really loved by certain teachers because I had this love of literature and writing and expressive, and so I was like a little darling to the English and speech departments, even though I did wind up getting my ass in trouble some of the times. But when I was 17, I made some fateful decisions that had long-range things. I got involved with, I was in a class of, I grew up in St. Louis County, about a mile and a half south of the airport. Went to Rittner High School off of St. Charles Rock Road. And it's not a large school, it was the largest school in Missouri at the time. We had 660 graduating seniors. I was midway, about 360 out of the 660, because I was indifferent. There are many people who have said true education is the result of apparent idleness. And from the point of view of many teachers, I didn't give a shit. But I read all the time. I talked serious conversations all the time with my friends. I was learning a lot, but I was learning what I wanted to learn at my own pace. And the teachers I got on best with were the ones who liked that spirit in me and nurtured it. And I did have some in the English department. But somewhere along the line, I got involved with a young lady who was the salutatorian of our class, the second. And she was highly successful. Everything she did, she was involved in every activity. She was in the theater department. She was on the student council. She had all this going on. I, on the other hand, was the bad boy. Well, of course, you know what happens between those two people. They get attracted to each other. And sitting in the study hall, she more or less sitting where you're sitting, and me sitting here. I was scribbling away one day, and she goes, "What in the world are you doing?" Because she really didn't like me. She goes, "What are you doing? You're irritating."
She said that?
Yeah. And I said, "Well, I'm writing a poem." She goes, "Really? You write poetry?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I do write poetry. I've written it since I was 8 years old." And she said, "Well, let me see it." So I put it over there, and she looks at it, and she goes, "You wrote this?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You just wrote this?" I said, "Yes, I just wrote this." She said, "This is actually good." Well, that was the beginning. And she had been going with the football captain, and she called him up and broke off with him. He was going to come and kick my ass. And she said, "Well, if you do that, I'll never talk to you again." And so he could have. I mean, he could have kicked I was okay, but I would not be able to handle him. And well, to make a long story short, we wound up getting married when she was 18 and I was 17, probably about 2 months after graduating high school. So here I was, 17 years old and married. And the condition, because we thought she was pregnant, turns out she wasn't, as we were to find out in a rather dramatic fashion, which I'm not going to get into, but she wasn't. But by then we were already married, because it was a different era. In this era, the parents would have gone about the whole thing completely different. But back then, it was just a different era. And especially with my family, because my mother was a PK, preacher's kid. She grew up with a father who was what they called a circuit rider preacher. He moved around to different churches every Sunday in rural Northwest Tennessee. And so we want to get him married. So here I was, 17 years old, married. And the condition that my mother, because I was 17, she had to sign for me, was that I would go into the military. So I looked around, me and a couple of buddies looked at our options because they were interested too. And two of us, me and Mike, decided we were going to go to the Air Force. And so by the time my 18th birthday rolled around in August, I was high school graduate, married, and in the Air Force.
Wow.
Yeah. And none of that had forethought to it. It just all happened. Okay, so then I go into the military, and when I went out, I was going to be a lifer. 2 weeks later, I started counting the days when I would get out. I had too big an authority problem. I just couldn't tolerate all that rigidity of the military. But it did do some good things for me. Just as a historical note, because history always weaves itself in and out of our lives. When I was in basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, just outside of San Antonio, it was August and it was hot. I mean, and into September it was hot. There were like 16 or 17 consecutive days of temperature over 105. And yet here we are out there marching and
training,
PE and all this kind of stuff. That's when I knew I was in good shape because although I never played on organized teams in high school because for that authority problem I had, I loved sports, especially fast pitch softball, at which I was very good. And so good that I actually helped the team I was on win this combined city county championship because I was a cleanup hitter. And I can remember, now this is the only sports story I'm going to tell you. I can remember a game, and I was 17 years old, and I can remember a game where we were playing our biggest rivals who was undefeated. And we were competing for the same thing. And they had a pitcher who was undefeated, and he was the cat's meow. I mean, he could blaze it in there. And when I went to the plate in the first inning, I got a single over second base off of him. But it was a weak hit, but it was a single. And the next one, I think I popped up to the third baseman. But in the later inning, we were trailing, and there were a couple of guys on, of our teammates on. And I can remember going up to the plate going, just don't make a fool of yourself. Just swing level, see the ball, do the best you can to put contact to it. So that's exactly what I did. I went, oh, okay, so here it comes. And I swing, and I knew I hit it really well. I mean, that I knew. So I took off running. And when I'm rounding first base, halfway to second base, the center fielder is still running. The ball has still not landed. That's how far I hit it. And by the time they got back into the infield, I'd already crossed. And I was a slow runner. I had crossed home plate. And somebody, a fan of theirs, said, how old are you? Because I did look older than I was, but I was only 17. And we went on and won the whole shebang.
Huh.
Yeah. So that was my one great shining moment. It was a good memory because I can remember, I think greatness of the event happens when you're not really intending for it to happen. Mm-hmm. You're focusing on other things, like not making a fool of yourself, not striking out,
and
then it happened, so, because obviously I was focusing on the right stuff. So obviously my teammates were happy, so.
I bet.
Yeah. So I go in the military because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Everything was kind of changed around, and I didn't get my orders until December. And I was kind of surprised when it came in because they sent me to Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, to learn Russian. So I would go home for a month in December, Christmas, New Year's, and my then wife, Gail, and I take off for Bloomington, Indiana, living on a trailer right across the street, as a matter of fact, from the football stadium.
No way.
Yeah. And so 9 months, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week from native Russian speakers who were immigrants from Russia, of musicians and artists and professors and engineers, people who had defected from Russia and who taught us Russian. In fact, one time when I was talking to somebody, a native Russian, and I was trying my Russian out with him, he goes, "You know what you sound like?" He says, "You sound like a highly educated person from Moscow."
Compliment?
Yeah, I would say. So the people I was learning from obviously were highly educated people.
No kidding.
Yeah, so then from there, that was 9 months. We went down to Goodfellow Air Force Base where I learned radio interception, because what I was trained to do is listen to radio, Russian air-to-ground radio communication. Because this is the Cold War era. And so I did that. I went from Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas to Bremerhaven, Germany. Gail stayed behind initially, and then I was what we called radio intercept. You would go through the dials trying to pick up signals, and when you hit something that was Russian, you would stop, pause, and make sure that it could be Russian air-to-ground communication. And then you would start your tape recorder, record it, and then it would go off to the analysts. Somewhere along the line, which I hated the job, it sucked. I was on 3 shifts. They rotated.
Long hours? Or
Well, not so much long hours.
what did you not like about the job?
I hated the military.
Yeah.
I mean, I did get some good things out. There's no doubt about it. I mean, and I do recommend it to young men your age because there is a lot of benefit. But I didn't like being told what to do.
Mm-hmm. It's probably not the right place to go.
I had an authority problem on both shoulders. And it came up sometimes in the military. I did get myself in trouble sometimes, but by and large, I knew enough to keep low profile. But okay, so now then, I go from there to Bremerhaven, Germany, which is on the North Sea, up on the northwest coast, across the English Channel, well, not from North Sea, from the British Isles and so forth. I really hated that. I mean, I just wasn't in a good place. And Gail came over and joined me, and I'll tell you why in a second. She came over and joined me, and natural enough, she winds up having an affair. She had joined the theater department and wound up with some guy in the theater department, lied to me about my census that they were doing it. She kept telling me I was crazy. I felt crazy. It was really a bad time. And one time, I had developed a friend. I had moved back on base from where she and I were living, but she was still living in the apartment we rented. And I can remember some guy, Jim, who was my best friend through the military. And he and I were out and we had drank too much. 10-cent beers. 25-cent mixed drinks. Although I couldn't stand mixed drinks then. So when we're out there, we were both loaded. He says to me, Jim says, "Swink, you haven't got a hair on your ass if you don't go and beat the shit out of that guy." You know who? And I was like, all right. He said, "Well, in fact, if you had a hair on your ass, you'd hit me right now." And I went, pop. And down he went. And he's laying on the ground, not moving at all. I fall down. I think I've killed him. And he starts laughing. So, at some point, she goes back to the States. And I stay there. And then Jim and I, in January of '65, we go to London on R&R vacation. And Churchill dies the very week we're there. So I didn't do it. So I always tell people
Good
that.
to clear it up.
I didn't do that. No, Churchill was great. But anyway, so when we came back, we worked in the military, in the Air Force. The group of people are not called platoons, they're called flights. So if you and I were working together in the same group, we'd be on a flight.
Okay.
And the flight rotated through shifts. So when I came back, nobody on my flight was talking to me. I couldn't figure it out. And finally, the guy who was the chief controller who routed stuff from the central console, I said, what the hell's going on? He goes, you haven't heard, have you? And I went, no. He goes, you lucky. Boom, 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 boom. I go, why? He goes, because you're going to Paris. Well, I thought he meant Paris, Missouri, because I had put in requests to be closer to my home. So I thought, okay, it must be a base in Paris, Missouri. That's only a couple hours from home. He goes, no, the way military people talk, he called me a name. Oh, dipshit, Paris, France. All of a sudden, both feet just took off the ground. I mean, because I was a literature buff lover. And all the American expatriates of the early 20th century and into the 30s all lived in Paris. I couldn't believe it. And the first night I get there, when I arrive on the train, I come and I get billeted. And of course, they have no base in Paris, so they give you a per diem, and you can't wear your military coat. The French would not allow U.S. military to wear military clothing on the streets. So I had a per diem allowance. There was no barracks, so therefore I had an apartment allowance, had food allowance. Here I was, 21 years old, with jingle jangle in my pocket in the greatest city in the world. The first night I'm there, I'm looking up where I'm billeted in because I hadn't got my regular apartment yet, and I see the Eiffel Tower. So I'm thinking, wow, that's cool. So I walk out of my thing, I just walk over to the Eiffel Tower. I've always been good with directions, so I found my way back, but I can remember standing on another going, just not even believing where I was. I mean, and the next year was pretty much like that. I mean, I just had one amazing experience
Paris.
And meeting one amazing from all over Europe, people your age, which I was at the time, and from Switzerland and from Sweden and from Ireland, in fact. And I fell in love with Harry's New York Bar, which is a strange name for the most successful bar in Paris, but it's called Harry's New York Bar. It's in a very eloquent section of Paris. But Paris was fantastic. I mean, to this day, I have just such vivid images of, you could wake up at 10 o'clock at night with insomnia and walk out in the street and you could stay going for hours because it was so fun walking around that city. It was just amazing. Because obviously I must have been intoxicated with romance in my head, you know. So I went and found all the places where all these writers wrote and lived and all this kind of stuff, the cafes they went to and stuff. But I think looking back, I can realize that I was different than what I thought I was. That's one thing I wanted to say to you. What you will learn in life is whatever you think life is right now, it's not that way. And whatever you think your life is going to be, it won't be that. It is, there's what I thought then, and there's what I know now. And they're not consistent. There is an understanding I have now that you can't have it now. You will have it someday, but you won't have it now. Is that a bad thing? No, because if we actually had the capacity to see the future, we'd all go hide underneath our beds. I mean, you know.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Well, there's a lot of bad things that are going to happen. I mean, on the other hand, there's a lot of great things. There'll be great things that you don't realize are great at the time. And there'll be bad things that you awfulize that are not that bad. So, you know, it's like learning balance, not to don't let your peaks get too high. And
highs and lows kind of
too low. Yeah, keep them. That you have experienced anxiety. So did I. I had such fears. In fact, if you had met me when I was 18 years old, and you had been an adult, and you know how if we met, we would shake hands. How are you? Nice to meet you. I wouldn't say a word and I wouldn't shake your hand. That's how closed off I was. Cool. Somebody once said that most people go into a trance in their early childhood from which they never fully recover. And I think by that point I was well into the trance. I just was shut down. I had social anxiety disorder. I mean, I had a hard time being around groups of people, even peers, friends. One-to-one, great. Sports, yes. I could play pickup, anything, anytime. I loved that. That was fun. Parties scared me, unless I could just pair off with somebody and go my own way. I had a lot of anxiety. I realize now, somebody once said that the largest script message that most of us are given in our childhood is be perfect. Be perfect. Don't make any mistakes. And whether or not they actually say it to us and whether or not they actually mean it, that's what we start saying to ourselves. We start setting this high standard for ourselves. We can't meet it. And there's never a finish line. No matter what you do, it's never good enough. Right? As long as you have that thought process in your head, you will always have anxiety. But once you tell yourself, I can only do the best I can, and if I make a mistake, I'll see what I can do to learn from it. One of your questions was, what would be my big takeaway from counseling? William Glasser was a great educational psychologist, had a phrase. It was called, look, but don't stare. Look at your problems, but don't stare at them. If you start staring at your problems, it'll turn into shame. But if you just look at it, okay, see what I got from it. And maybe I didn't get any of this one. Well, I could go back some other time and look at it again and say, it took me forever. Don't let it take you forever to do that, because I went to a counselor. I was in my 40s, and my life was miserable. I had gone through my third divorce. I was in a new relationship that I shouldn't have been in. Although as it turned out, it worked out well. I shouldn't have been in it when I was in it, but she and I wound up making it work, and that's my current wife. We've been together 38 years, so something must be working.
No kidding.
Yeah, but getting back to it, the counselor said to me, I had gone to counseling out in San Diego, and I lived in San Diego. And I go into counseling in St. Louis, I've been born and raised in St. Louis. And I would get moderately better for a while and then tumbled back. But this counselor said something to me in the first 10 minutes of first hour of meeting with her. And she said, Steve, and I'll say this to you, you don't like yourself, you have never liked yourself, and you don't know how to like yourself. And because of that, you live on the edge of shame. Now, I don't know if that applies to you or not, but it certainly applied to me. And it kept me, and she said, as a result, you're constantly not satisfied with what you do or stuff. She said, but once you start to like yourself and to accept yourself, all the shame will go away. That was in the first hour of me meeting her. And it just resonated with me because I knew she was right. I didn't like myself. I had never liked myself. I never even thought about it. But now that she put it in my head, I went, I don't like myself. I've never liked myself. I don't know how to like myself. I don't even know what that means. How do you like yourself? She said, if you begin to like yourself and accept yourself, all that shame will go away. All the anxiety will go away. And so over the next 15 months, when I saw her and I went to a group, slowly but surely, I began to see that. I began to understand that the self-talk we do in our heads that we need to even be aware of is what takes us up or down. And if we let those negative crap in our head just dominate our thoughts, of course it's going to take us down. But if we dispute it and argue with it and not refuse to allow it to take sink and replace it, not with the opposite, because that would be silly too, but with balance, then that subsides. We all just do the best we can. Every single person does the best they can. And whether it's the best of all, well, that can't be helped. You know, you do the best you can and satisfy yourself with that. And the beautiful thing about life is the way it unfolds. There's always news over. There's always the next day, you know. So it took me a long time to learn that, but I helped other people learn that too. So where did I leave off? I was in the military. I was in Paris. Okay, so at that point I was 21. It was 1965. I was 21 years old, and I fell in love with this gal there. She was, of all places, she was from Detroit area. Her father was senior vice president in General Motors. She was there getting her master's degree at the Sorbonne. And she and I just met at Harry's New York bar one night when this Irish dude who I just met was playing his flute. And there was this one with two French poodles over here. And we were trying to get the French poodle's attention because the woman, cold-shouldered, just wouldn't even look at us. Now we were sitting at the bar, and there were these two young women who walk in with two guys, and they sit down at this table. After a while, I noticed, and you had to walk by their table to go to the bathroom downstairs. Well, I noticed the guys weren't there. So when I did it the second time, I thought, well, this is weird. I mean, so I bought them a drink through the bartender, and they acknowledged it. And then I ordered them another one, and I sat by the table and leaned over, and I said, well, this will teach you girls to come into a place where the guys won't leave with you. And they laughed. And I, out of the blue, I kissed one of them. Just full out kissed her. And she was like this. And I said, well, you can't kiss worth a damn. I could teach you to kiss like a champ in 3 kisses. And I started to kiss her again, and she goes, like this. But she liked me. And we wound up becoming a torrid affair. She's the one who was from Detroit area, Grosse Pointe Woods. And you talked about turning points in life. Well, yes, a turning point was getting married when I was 17, no doubt about it. But I think that Paris thing, Joanne, which was her name, she said, Steve, if you stay with, because she came from wealth. She said, if you stay with me, and she knew I wanted to write. That was my ambition, to be a writer. And she said, if you stay with me, you'll never have to work another day of your life. But that wasn't my motivation, because I really loved her. But in the meantime, Gail writes me a letter from St. Louis. She moved back to St. Louis, admitting to me what she denied to me all along, that she had been having an affair, and begging for my forgiveness. Well, this is where things went like this. The military offered me a chance to extend 6 months in Paris or get an early out. And I took the early out because I wanted to go back to Gail. And I've thought about that many times because I know, in fact, Joan and I continued to correspond for some time after that. And one day I came home and Gail had opened a letter from Joanne and was crying, and I realized that this can't go on. I mean, you can't keep doing this. So I wrote Joanne a letter, and sort of a Dear John letter. And I've thought about that many times across the years, and one time I was talking it over with Linda, my wife, and she said, well, you know it wouldn't have worked with Joanne. I said, yeah, I think deep down I knew it wouldn't have, because the crazy person I would have carted it off to Detroit, and then it would have really been a mess. Because I wasn't in any shape to be having relationships with anybody, frankly. I was too self-centered. And somebody, Mark Twain once said, we never really grow up, we just learn how to behave. Well, I think I knew how to fake it, but it was just fakery. I really didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. I was full of desires, but desire is not a game plan, you know. So I know it wouldn't have worked, but it didn't work out with Gail either, even though we went on for probably another 3 years after that. We went to Bloomington, like I say, we moved into this trailer across from the football field. And one thing I was proud of is I this is a different era, and back in that era, there were so many stories of women who worked so that their husbands could go through school. Well, I decided I wasn't going to be that guy. That if I went, she was going to be able to go too, because that was our ambition. And so we both went to school full time, and we both worked what we had to work. And I had the GI Bill, of course. And that's one thing I was proud of, is that we actually graduated at the same time.
Oh.
And she got hers in theater, and I got mine in English literature. And but along the way, before we got our degrees, we actually split from each other. And I was a hothead. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I had a really, and you know, there is a shame you have sometimes when you look back at the shit you did, and it would not be uncommon for me just to walk out the door and stay gone for a day or two without her even knowing where I was and not feeling like I had to give her an explanation when I came back. That's how self-centered I was, and unaware I was, and lacking of empathy I was. I'm not proud of any of that. I mean, that on the other hand, I don't hold it against myself, because a counselor said to me one time, you know, we all do the best we can with what we know to do. We can learn new things to do, but until we learn them, we'll keep doing the old stuff, which is my best definition. I have to get to my definition of therapy here somewhere along the line. So anyway, and then of course I did what so many people do, probably people in your generation do this too, a rebound relationship. Moved out of one, right into another one. So when I look back at my life, I realized, and Linda and I have talked about this because we're pretty open about former relationships we've been in. And I said, you know, there are so many similarities between Kathy and Linda. They're both witty, funny people, can just say shit just off the top of their heads and make me laugh no matter what mood I'm in. And I'll give you an example of Linda's. I was working, I don't know what I was doing. I had to go speak to a group of 250 family service workers in Springfield on domestic violence. And the day of it came up, I said to Linda, God, I'm nervous. I'm really nervous about doing this. She goes, oh, you're going to do good. She says, you're a professional. You're a gabber. You're a professional gabber. And I started laughing. I went, yeah, well, that's true. So I went in front of the people, and that's how I started my speech, telling that anecdote. Another one was, she is just, well, anyway, she can make me laugh. And not on purpose, she just says this stuff that she says. It's really funny. Witty. Well, Kathy was the same way. And they both have a trait that in common. They both could just tell me off like nobody's business. I mean, wow. And but I was in a place back then. I didn't know what it took to make a relationship work. I didn't even know who I was. And I just flitted, and I was just horrible to Kathy. Not physically horrible, but emotionally. I went out with other women, which is one of the most shameful things I've ever done. And I would discuss myself now if I knew somebody like I was back then. Poor Kathy. Well, that's another thing. Both those women I talked to you about, Gail died when she was 69. And I found out a few years ago that Kathy died in 2000. She was only 52 years old. Cancer. She, at the point where she and I had broken up, she had a hard time finding another job. It had nothing to do with our breakup, but she couldn't find another job. And eventually a friend of hers in college who had moved to Boston talked her into moving to Boston. In the meantime, I moved out to San Diego. And one day out in San Diego, the phone rings and it's Kathy. She says, guess what? I went, what? She goes, I just bought a condominium and all the furniture with cash. She had gotten a job with a pharmaceutical firm. This is why we hate pharmaceutical firms. Well, of course, I realized that was a gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So there.
Suck.
Yeah, stuck on this. So anyway, got my college degree. I'm 30. No, I'm 26 at that point. Go back to St. Louis, get into the field of human services, stumbled into looking for a job, and one day a friend called me up. She said, Steve, I know this perfect job for you. It was working for what we used to call the Welfare Department, Division of Family Services, Children and Family Services. And it was doing child abuse and neglect investigations in the inner city of St. Louis. And strange as it may seem, I loved that job. I mean, I hated the abuse and neglect I ran into, but I rose to the occasion. I was helping somebody. I gave a damn, you know, and I liked people. And it was an entirely black caseload, black women. I knew nothing about black women. But I began to learn and stuff, and I was a non-judgmental person. One time I was sitting with a client who had her kids, she had let her kids drop out of, her oldest kid drop out of school. He was 15, so that he could help take care of her and the younger kids. So I got involved because it was a neglect case. And slowly but surely started putting her life back together. She did not like me at all, black. She did not like me at all at first. I was sitting next to her one time, went over to the place, and goes, oh, I know who you are. You're Mr. White Man with your Cadillac. I didn't have a Cadillac. And you want to go downstairs and get in your Cadillac, and you want to go pick up your black maid and take him to your wealthy little place. And then you want to come in here to my black woman and tell me what to do. So I'm sitting here listening to her. And of course, by that point, I just said, well, that's a good story. None of it's actually true, but it's a good story. And, well, to make a long story short, I began to help her 15-year-old. And this is a tragic story. At that time, the major electrical provider in St. Louis had created a program for 16-year-olds, and by this time he had turned 16, where they would take them on, give them the same duties, same salary as regular full-time employees, teach them how to get up in the morning, get ready for work, get to work on time, the etiquette of being on the job, the whole shebang. So he calls me up, Mr. Steve, guess what? I go, what, Tom, what's up? He goes, and he told me this whole story about the job. Wow, that's fantastic. So I go, maybe a couple of weeks go by, and I go by his house to visit with his mom and his sisters and him. And his older sister opens the door, and she says, you haven't heard, have you? And I go, no. She goes, Tom's dead. I go, what do you mean Tom's dead? He got killed, he's dead. And she was nice, and so I went back and talked to her mother, and her mother was talking to a neighbor. And apparently that very night, he and a cousin had been celebrating with her mother, and they ran out of cigarettes. So they were going to go down to the store and get some cigarettes. And when they went down there, this carload of other black guys pulled up beside them and told him to run. Well, the cousin says, don't do it, Tom, because if you run, they're going to shoot you. Well, he ran, and they shot him right in the back. Total strangers. So I could remember standing above his coffin. There was nobody else in the chapel when I was there, and just the meaninglessness of everything. I thought, what the hell am I doing this job for? Where did he live for? What is this all about? In fact, I kind of immortalized it in a poem I wrote called Chicago. Let's see, another son, too soon a man, drop out from a teachless school, mentor of his mother's hope, bearer of his siblings' need, walks into the blackest night and dies upon the bleakest street, a bullet in his back, just like that. So it was a powerful event inside of a job in which I felt I had a job that meant something. It wasn't all misery. I mean, there were a lot of good things too. I mean, I'm going to tell you one other story. I'll give you a sense. There was another woman. She was in her 30s, very, very attractive black woman. Had a semi-professional job, but she had 6 kids. It was just her. And so some of their needs weren't getting met, and so that's how I got involved. Well, when I went over there, she said, let me make something perfectly clear to you. I don't like white people. I especially don't like white men, and I'm not going to like you. But since I have to go through this, I'll do the best I can. Okay? So, comes Christmas Eve that year, and she's still been a little cold to me. Well, she's had a hard time getting all the goods together for her 6 kids by herself. And it's been snowing like crazy in St. Louis that day, and I had an old beat up white station wagon. And I said, I'll tell you what, Doris, how about if you drive, because we kept getting stuck in the snow. I get out and I pushed and put her behind the wheel. She would drive. And eventually, after we did this 3 times, we got to the place where they had some really neat baskets for kids and everything else. We picked them all up, took them back to her place, and I started leaving. She reaches out and she takes hold of my arm and she goes, I'm going to trust you forever. So that's why I did that kind of stuff.
For those moments.
Well, because that's who I was. And I think it communicated that I was probably the most popular service worker in that entire region. In fact, I had people who would see me parking down the street, walking up to their house, and I remember this one thing. This woman was sitting on the railing of her apartment place with another woman who was also, they were talking, and she goes, oh my God, it's Mr. Swink. They've sent me Mr. Swink. Hallelujah. And she didn't even know who I was.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, so anyway, that led me, in the meantime, my personal life was breaking down, and I was 30 years old, and Kathy and I had been together for a few years, and I was crazy. I would have crazy moments. I mean, truly insane, raging fits. Scare the shit out of everybody around me, including myself. And after one of those, I got my sister-in-law, one of my sister-in-laws, Kathy's next oldest sister, called me up and said, Steve, we love you. We love you dearly, but you're gonna have to get help. So I went to this psychiatrist, and so here I am working in the inner city of St. Louis during the day, and then I'm going to this guy who's got his practice in Clayton in a 16th floor of a multi-high-rise with an upper-crust neurotic clientele. But he says, you know, Steve, I'm going to start a little practice with people who don't have degrees in the field, so you can be lay therapists. Would you be interested? I said, no. So I went home and said, Kathy, are you crazy? That is a golden opportunity, and that's something you want to do. So I called him back up. He's still going, yeah, of course. So he took me in, And so for the next couple of years, I was doing co-therapy with him and seeing people individually in his practice and stuff on the evenings and weekends. And then I started getting working on my master's with Webster University. I started a program in the evenings for working people. So I did that, and I eventually got my master's in human services from Webster University. It was called Webster College then. And in the meantime, marriage breaks up. I didn't know anything about relationships. And this is all heading to what I'm going to tell you about counseling here, because I reached conclusion from all my experiences plus my professional reading and my professional doing. So, get my master's degree in August, pack my bags, and move to San Diego, sight unseen, know nobody, and don't have a job. I just wanted to go. And that's a theme in my life. Not recent, but 3 times in my life. I sold everything I had, practically everything I had, and moved to places I'd never been before. I went on a 3-month camping tour one time down the Washington, Oregon, California coast to mid-California. That's what I did. Slept on beaches.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I'm in San Diego, poor as hell. Not knowing how to meet ends meet. Wind up marrying again another St. Louis gal, and who winds up becoming the mother of my 2 youngest kids. So we were living up there in the 4,000 foot of the Sierra. Now, next to Paris, that would be my second best favorite place, is living in those mountains. I always used to kid with people. I made 2 major mistakes in my life. The first one was going back to my first wife. And the second was leaving the mountains of California.
Really?
Oh, God.
Beautiful.
We were an hour and a half at 4,000 foot level out on a clear day off the balcony at our chalet that we lived on the edge of a 4,000 foot level. We could see peaks in Yosemite National Park. Wow. An hour and a half drive across the San Joaquin Valley. We're on the California coast. San Francisco.
Doesn't get better than that.
It was wonderful. But, again, it's just that restless thing.
You just have an itch for more.
Yeah. I haven't had that itch in a very, 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 very long time, but I sure had it then. And in fact, I wrote a poem before I left St. Louis. I'm going to share it with you because it's a short poem. Ariel, my daughter, went to hear John Wood for a while when she was 18. And she took the poem to her English class, and her English professor looked at it and went, "Who wrote this?" She goes, "My dad." He said, "Your dad wrote this."
Really?
It's called I Dream of Distant Places. I dream of distant places, full of desire for going, leaving behind adventure. Say goodbye to a dull city, grown duller with soot and banality, the gray and grime overwrought with crime, the familiar, constant similarity, over familiarity, the predictable, the absolutely sure, the known past care for knowing, the indiscreet content of public faces. Boom. I dream of distant places. And that would have expressed my heart and soul entirely at that time.
That's a great poem.
You like that one?
I like that. That's beautiful.
I dream of distant places. And I think many people have that feeling. They understand that. I used to, when I was still living in St. Louis, and I would be commuting back out to Kirk because I worked for Kathy, and I would commute from the inner city where I had my job out to Kirkwood, where we were staying, get caught up in the rush hour traffic, And I'd have these fantasies of just staying on Highway 70 and just keep on going. Okay, so then I got a hair up my ass. You're talking about turning points in life. I just got this. I had a friend who had been the guy who I joined the Air Force with at the same time. He had stayed in for 3 or 4 terms, and then he got out, and he was living in Malibu, and I was in San Diego, and he decided, me and Denise, my kid's mother, the kids weren't born yet. We had got, listen to this, we had gotten I had bought an old Volkswagen bus, like a van that had been restored. The guy had repainted it. He put black air scoops on it. He had taken out the back seats and put in shelving and then pads over the top of it so you could sleep on the top of it. And he put a Porsche engine in it. So I bought it. And it was some more fun going up the mesas in California because, you get behind a Volkswagen, you think, oh shit, gotta go up. So people would want to do that with me. I just punch it, boom, off I would go. So that was fun.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But anyway, so what Denise and I were going to do is we were going to just consolidate everything we had there, sell it off and stuff, and then we were just going to become vagabonds and just vagabond the U.S., the West for a while. And just stop wherever we had to and do whatever we had to do to earn some money. Denise and I had moved back to St. Louis. We had just rented an apartment, put the down payment on it, deposit. I didn't have a job yet there, but I wasn't concerned about that because I knew so many people there. I was positive I'd get hired somewhere. And he offered me a job here at Chaddock. So I came and interviewed, decided to do it. We got the deposit back on our place in St. Louis, came up here. That was in '82. And so by the time I left Chaddock, that was in '82, and I left Chaddock in '89, I had become the director of residential services there, including my boss's boss, my former boss's boss. And he couldn't take that, he just left.
How was that experience at Chaddock?
Well, it was mixed. It was a mixed experience. I mean, I really wasn't cut out to be a high-level administrator. I had nothing in my background that prepared me for that, and my personality, I had a lot of personality problems that got in my way. I was a type A personality, intense, but also too much of a people pleaser. I cared too much what other people thought. And on the other hand, I was extremely good at working with kids. And it wasn't just because I was nice, because I wasn't always nice. I mean, sometimes I was very confrontational. But I was genuine, and I think kids relate to genuine. And I also thought on my feet. I mean, one time this kid raises his fist, he's going to hit me. And I don't know where in the hell this came from. He goes, and I went, quick, call so-and-so's mother and tell her that he can't talk to her because he's going to jail because he just hit a guy. The kid just looks at me and drops his hand and walks away.
That's a great thing to think.
You could have hit a crazy man. So anyway, probably my favorite, I mean, there were a lot of stories about Chaddock, but I had risen to become the director, and my policy with the staff, and I had 55 staff, and 5 cottages at that time, and was that if you have a crisis and you feel like you need to talk to me, don't think twice. I don't care if it's the midnight. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't care if it's a holiday. If it's inappropriate call, we'll just sort that all out later. I don't want you to feel stuck. So one day I got a call, and it was like a holiday. And it was late in the evening, probably around 10-ish. And it was from some of my senior, most experienced staff. So I knew this was serious. They were like, could you come on campus and help us out? Because our cottage has been completely crazy all day, and we've tried this and we've tried that, and nothing works. And would you be willing to come in and help us out? I said, sure. So I went in, walked in the cottage. There were like 12 kids in the cottage. And this was a male cottage, boys' cottage. Boys from roughly the age of 14 to 17. No, 12 to 14. So I walk in, and if you can imagine chaos, furniture overturned, curtains torn down, just mess all over the place. And the staff were just like, I mean, like I say, they were senior experienced staff. They were just like worn out. So I walked in and stood there for a couple minutes, because that was always my technique, was just to stand there and look at what I was looking at. And so I reached a decision. I turned to the staff members and I said, just go home. They go, really? Oh, yeah, go home. What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to take care of this. Well, by yourself? I go, well, why should they wear 2 people out? I mean, he wears 1 out at a time. So they went home. And the kids were like, oh, good, fresh meat, and they come running up and doing their out of control crazy stuff with me. Not hitting, they don't do that, but. So, it's winter, I think, because I had a coat on. And then, I don't know if you know what a console TV is. It's the old style. It would be about this tall in a console that reaches out like this.
Okay, yeah.
And it was in the living room, and kids, and the stuff that I normally would try to do didn't work. So I walked over to the console and I took my coat off, put it over here, unbuttoned my shirt, slowly rolled my sleeve up. By this point, some kids are starting to look at me like, what's this son of a beak doing? So I started rolling this up. And finally, by this point, there are more and more kids that are looking at me like, oh, what's happening here? I said, you guys are so lucky. You see those 2 staff members I sent home, and you wore them out? They're going to go home. They're going to get out of their work clothes. They're going to take a shower or a bath. They're going to put on some fresh clothes. They're going to eat a meal, watch some television, sort their mail through, go to bed, make love to their wife or husband, get a good night's sleep. In the meantime, you're going to wear me out just like them. And I'm going to go home because I'm going to be relieved by 2 people. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to take out of these work clothes and I'm going to take a shower, put on some fresh clothes, get something to eat, watch some television, and go make love to my wife and get a good night's sleep. In the meantime, do you know where you guys are going to be? Right here. You cannot wear us out. Guess what happened at that point?
What?
It was over.
Wow.
What did you hear in my voice when I said that?
Truth.
This is the way it's going to be. You cannot wear us out. So yeah, you can send me home, but there'll be more.
Yeah,
we
got reinforcements.
I said, where will you be? Right here. So, well, there's nothing you're going to read in a book about that. I mean, John, who was an aficionado, that guy who was my boss, I became his boss when I came up here. He was way into studying different forms of therapy and intervention and stuff. And he went through a phase in which there was this one that he just loved. And he said, but Swink, you do that all the time and you never read it at all. He said, you just come up with this stuff.
Naturally comes from, you just have to experience it.
Well, you get kids on the campus who would refuse to go to school because there was on-campus school. They refused to get up and go to it. And the staff would go crazy because of it. So I said, well, I'll tell you what. I appreciate your circumstances. I feel like staying in bed too, but maybe you could do it for all of us. And so I left. The kid had this look of like, what is he doing on his face? I went and got the kids in the classroom and the teacher, and I brought him to his bedroom.
Did you really?
And so we just gathered around his bed.
Brought the school to his room?
Yeah.
So there, threw for a 180.
The last thing you would expect. Or this cottage, these people, another cottage staff on a different cottage calls me up and says, God, we got craziness going on here. We don't know what to do. We've been at it all day. We've been at it all evening. So I came on, I know what it was. Yeah, the issue they had was they couldn't get their kids to get their stuff done in the morning and get to school. They would not go to school. It just was right there. That's what it was. The other one was the crazy one. This is the one where the kids just simply refused. So the staff asked me if I would come into their staff meeting, their weekly staff meeting, and talk this over with them, so I did. And we were sitting there listening, and I said, you can't solve a problem if you don't own the problem. What are we doing that is creating this problem? And they started getting into some stuff. And that was good. I mean, and I validated it. I said, the thought that was in my mind is maybe we're lousy teachers. I mean, where are they going to learn to do the stuff they have to do? They're going to learn it from us. And if we're owning the problem, let's don't blame them for being poor students. Let's accept their responsibility for being poor teachers. Well, although that was kind of insulting to them as staff, they also understood that there was some truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to talking, and I said, how about if we assume that we back this train up a bit and we go back to square one and assume that we failed to teach them how to get up in the morning. Now, I know it sounds silly, but let's assume we failed to teach them how to get up correctly and the routines they have to go through and the stuff they have to do. And pretty soon they were joining me in this brainstorm. So we agreed the next morning that we would come in and all meet there before it was time for the kids to get up. And the style we were going to take with them, and this is pure Swink at work, is we're here to apologize to you, to the kids. We're here to apologize to you. We've been lousy caretakers. We have let you down. We are going to embarrass you because of our own inadequacy as caretakers. We don't want you to be embarrassed. We want you to feel like you fit in or maybe even rise above the others. So we're here to teach you how to get up, how to get dressed, how to brush your teeth, comb your hair, eat your meal, gather your stuff together, and get to school on time. Well, they thought it was just a gas to have us all there that first morning. I mean, like, wow, Well, the second morning it was like, okay, and then the third morning, okay, you don't have to do this anymore. We know how this is. I go, no, we've been really terrible. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. Fourth morning, it was, listen.
I can get ready.
We can do it. Never had another problem getting into school.
Wow.
I thought outside the box. I think that's what it was. I didn't do things rigidly. I just came up with these. Yeah. My personality is kind of explained by this thing. There was a mule that a young farmer had, and he got stopped in the middle of the road. He couldn't get the mule to move one way or the other. Tried to push it, tried to pull it, tried to coax it, tried to, different stuff. wasn't having any of it, just stood there. And so an old farmer came on, was watching the young farmer for a while. Finally, the young farmer says, I can't do this. Can you do it? And the old farmer goes, yep. Goes over and gets a 2x4. Comes up, gives the mule a big swat across the rear end. And the young man says, the young farmer says, why'd you do that for? He says, well, you gotta get its attention first. And that's what I worked on. You have to get their attention. The one thing that I was able to get across to the staff is there's nothing we're doing with these kids that haven't been done before. We're not unique. We're not more intelligent than other caretakers. Their parents or the other centers they've been in, to other counselors they've had. So get that notion right out of your head. If we're going to be successful, it's because we come up with strategies and we apply them together and we stay together with them. And then we'll get through it. We'll be able to do this. And so that's what we would do. We'd strategize a lot about what we were going to do. And I said, every time you find yourself in the box, just take time out. Get yourself out of the box because the box won't work. Remember, that's been done by everybody else. You know what I mean? What's going to be unique about you is if you try something that's never been done before. You know, being nice doesn't work. Kid run away. We had a lot of runaways. So a kid would like, you got your clothes laying over here on the floor. You need to go pick them up. I'm not going to pick those fucking clothes up. Yeah, you will. No, I won't. I said, well, you're not going to pick them up right now, but you will wind up picking them up sometime. He goes, ho, ho, ho. Out the door they go. Run away. And Stan would go, well, what are we going to do about the clothes? Well, you heard what I said. He's going to pick them up when he comes back. Comes back, there they are. I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, it's just, you have to think about what were they trying to accomplish by resisting. So you have to figure out a way around their resistance. And in my case, it was, well, I didn't say you had to pick it up right now. Another kid just blew a fuse at me because I suggested he go up and clean his room. And I said, okay, don't clean it. So I went up the steps and I went into his room and I started cleaning up his room. He comes up behind me, he goes, what are you doing? I said, you don't have to clean your room up, I'm willing to clean it up. He comes in and he starts helping clean it up. Next thing you know, he and I are talking and he's laughing. See, you have to have this sense of, this isn't a contest to win, Anyway, so there I met Chaddock, and I rose up to become the director of the program, and I wasn't a good director. I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing. I didn't know how to be a director. I had such an authority problem myself. I had never resolved it. How can you help other people with their authority problems if you got one of your own? So I got canned. In the meantime, I had started a relation. Denise and I had long divorced. And I started dating one of my coworkers. And who happens to be Linda. And she and I have been together for over 30-something years now. And we always kid about the fact that we both took the best thing away from Chaddock. Well, I know I did. I don't think she did, but I did. And then I went to Recovery Resources, a full-service alcohol and drug treatment center. After 1 year being there, my boss, who I loved, Jerry Homuth, he was just, so talk about a funny guy. He was a funny guy. He was so laid back. One of our coworkers said that if he was butter, it would have melted already. But he was also funny. Not intentionally funny, just one of those people who just say stuff that's funny, But he's smart, very, very smart. And I'll give you an idea of it. He says, Steve, I really like having you as the residential director here, but can I give you a piece of advice? I go, sure. It would be nice if you actually learned something about alcohol and drug treatment.
Not trying to be funny, but it's hilarious.
Well, I think probably the same school I came from. Just say something they would get. So he was right. I really didn't know anything really about it. So I really went out and learned everything about it. Well, somewhere along the line, my life broke down. And it broke down in the same way it had always broke down. And I had to admit to myself I didn't have a clue how to make my personal life work. Linda and I were not married. She was making it as plain as she could be that we weren't going anywhere together. This was it. She left a note on my kitchen table that said, "You're crazy, you're insane, you always will be." I believed her. So I had heard about some program for men in town, domestic violence. And I wasn't a physically violent man, I was an emotionally violent man. A co-worker, a co-instructor of mine when I was doing a group in Jacksonville said, "Steve, you're not a physically abusive man, you are an emotionally, and you're a mind fucker," which was true. And so I looked up the program, and it was some guy who had been a minister somewhere in Iowa, and he beat up his wife in front of the congregation, literally, physically beat her up. And obviously lost that position. His wife left him, kids left him. And as he told the story, he had gone through programs and with no success. And being a minister, he prayed that there'd be some enlightenment, some way through this. And what he got in mind was that if he designed a program, the program would set him free. And he developed something, a program for men, in groups of men. And the first program he started was here in Quincy, over on Broadway near where Family Dollar is now. And so the day that I started that program was the last day that he was there. He had let his protege take over there, and he was moving to Denver because he had an opportunity to go national. And it was his protege who said that to me: "You don't like yourself, you don't know how to like yourself, you'll never like yourself, but you can learn." And believe me, that was illuminating in and of itself, because I had never framed the problem that way before. And the entire next 14 months that I spent in individual session and group session was me learning how to actually accept myself. And the anxiety disappeared. I'm not saying I never felt any ordinary anxiety again on a certain subject. Like I had a little mild anxiety this morning about coming to meeting you. But then I thought, but this is going to be fun too, so let's do that. That was Paul Hextrom who started that program. Now you could actually research Paul very easily, because there was an ABC TV movie made of his life that starred the late John Ritter, played him. It was called The Unforgivable.
The Unforgivable.
That was an ABC TV movie.
Write that down.
It was a little movie about his life, and included starting this program. And in the meantime, his wife and he reconciled, and the kids reconciled with him, and I would go out there and spend maybe a week or two at a time at his house, going to workshops that he would have there. There were, it's like a lot of great men, there were things I really liked about him, and there were things that really turned me off about him. But he did have a genius for putting together the conceptual part of this stuff. And that's the program that I wound up teaching first at Recovery Resources when I was there and started a program there. And then when I left, I went out to Mount Sterling for a while and worked in the mental health stuff, which was that was healing to the max.
Really?
Oh my God, was that 45 minutes there, 45 minutes there. I found the back ways there, which were just heaven on earth, driving through the flocks of turkey and seeing the 100 deer on the hillside and the curves. Oh, I loved it. It was so peaceful. And I was the only male in the building I worked in with about 20 females, and they became like my sisters. I mean, it was so healing, just totally healing. Had a great boss. She and I are best friends now. Found out she loved poetry. I write poetry. She gave me one of the greatest compliments I ever get. She said, Steve, you know, all my life I've run across people who say they write poetry. And I thought I will never meet an actual poet. But I have met an actual poet. Not to crow on myself, but when I went to Calftown Cafe, because they do poetry readings there on 8th Street. And I did a couple of nights there. Anyway, Marguerite one time introduces me to this group of poets. This is the best poet in our region. Said that about me to this group of people. No pressure.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Well, you heard a couple.
Oh, no, they're beautiful.
Things. Yeah, I mean, all my life, in fact, when I was 17, that's when I wanted to be. I wanted to be a published poet, wanted to be a writer. It didn't quite work out well, I guess in a way it worked out for the poetry, but I think I found a field I was good in. I mean, so there I am doing that domestic violence program at Recovery Resources. And when I go to Mount Sterling, I want to create a small little program for men there in Brown County. And then I come back to Quincy and I start a group here. And then I start another group here. And then I start one in Pittsfield, and then I start one in Jacksonville, then I start one in Springfield, and then I start another one in Springfield, and then I start one in Hannibal. And my vision was to be the Pied Piper domestic violence groups across, West Central Illinois and eastern Missouri, or northeastern Missouri. But in the meantime, I met a woman named Chalona Edgerly, Dr. Edgerly, and she had started the master's degree program in counseling at QU. She and her husband was also a professor there. And she and I met on the Adams County Family Violence Council, and we were both bored by the meeting. And so we got to chatting with each other. And she found out what I did and invited me into her class, for one of her classes, to talk to a master's group of students about domestic violence and substance abuse. And so I did. And later she said, the students want you to teach courses here. They were really excited about you. So she offered me a couple of opportunities to teach there. And then one led to another, and pretty soon it's like, so I gave up Springfield, I gave up Jacksonville, I gave up Pittsfield, I gave up Hannibal. Because I was teaching more and more. I wound up teaching 3 at QU and 3 at Culver Stockton, because Dr. Chalona, my really good friend Chalona now, had moved to Culver Stockton administratively. And she put a bug in the ear of the dean there, who showed up at my house to offer me a position. No interview, just here it is. And when I showed up at Culver Stockton, Chalona said, I think you are going to realize you're the hottest adjunct instructor around. Actually, I think your mother is the hottest adjunct around, but I didn't know her then. So I did those 3 at 3, and by that point I had given up everything except the 2 I did here in town. Plus I was running a teenage group for probation department in the basement of the probation department, which was fun. Fun.
Oh, I'm sure.
This one kid was something one time, because he had been such a jackass when he first came in. He's sitting across from me and goes, I don't know what kind of magic you weave, but I actually like coming here. and the other kids say, he's different out there. You used to kid with him, you couldn't do anything with him now, and he's a nice guy. It's the process. There's been a lot written about the best type of therapy styles and theories and all this kind of stuff. You know what the most impactful study done was?
What?
Somebody who studied all those modalities and reached one conclusion. Modalities have nothing to do with it. It's the personality of the therapist. That if you like the therapist, then they're going to be effective with you.
Very true.
Yeah. And I believe that. I mean, I really believe that, because I've had some clients who did not like me.
You just can't get him to open up.
Yeah. Some guy comes to my office one time in Monster and he says, I just want you to know this is all bullshit. He said, the fact that I got sent here against my will is bullshit. This building's bullshit. What you're going to do here is bullshit. And as a matter of fact, you're bullshit. And I said, well, now that we've got that straight, you missed one. You're bullshit too. He just looked at me and smiled. Not that we're getting ever clearer. So have I covered anything you wanted to hear?
You've covered everything. I wanted to hear more.
One of the things I took away from counseling is you can't do what you don't know how to do, but you can learn. All the labels that we give people, like take the anxiety business that I had. I could learn. I didn't know how to like myself, but I could learn. I didn't even know what that meant. I mean, when the counselor said that to me, it just went like this, because I had no concept of what that meant. I do now. I got asked, what do you do each day for Steve? My mind went blank. Well, I read some. Maybe I call my daughter. I say hi to. I do something for my mom. I do this. No, Steve. Those are things that you do for other people. What do you do for you? My mind went blank. I didn't even know what the hell she was talking about. It has nothing to do with pleasure. It just has to do with, like today, this is something I'm doing for me. What was my payoff for doing this? I'm just doing it because I want to, it just seems like, well, first of all, I love Tiffany. So obviously I'm going to help her son out, if I can. I think it's like asking yourself, am I putting myself down? How am I putting myself down? What would my best, that was something the counselor taught me. She said, go objective on yourself and talk to yourself. And what would you say to yourself? If you felt what you felt, what would your best friend say to you? Your best friend wouldn't say, kick your ass around the block. They'd say, come on, man, you're cool, you know?
It's hard, though. It's hard for the...
Well, because you're trying to replace all these negative messages in here. The first step is to convince yourself that you're producing your own, whatever it is. I learned this. Whatever you feel right this second is because you chose to feel it. You could have chosen otherwise.
A lot of people feel like they just don't have a choice.
I know that.
Unless you have to switch your mindset.
And that's how they become victims. But by convincing yourself that, yes, I talked myself into this, and I can talk my way out of it. And that alone is a huge freeing thing. That has freed me more times than I can count. As recently as probably this week. I mean, there's probably something that came up that I would just say, wait a minute here, knock that off. Just knock that off. It's noise. I'm not going to listen to that noise. I may not be the best guy around, but I'm good enough. I'm damn good. I'm not any worse. I'm not any better. I don't need to be worse. And I don't need to be better. I love what Oscar Wilde said. He was a great wit. Be yourself. Everybody else is taken.
That's
funny?
awesome.
That's
awesome.
Funny? I think that's funnier now, but it's true.
It is.
It is really
Be
true.
yourself. Everybody else. I've never heard that. I've never heard that.
So you want to be yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody else is taken. Well, I think that gets down to the should business. Whose needs are you meeting? I mean, I had a good colleague at Chag, Jenny Seidel, who was an amazing person. She took the girls in one of the girls' cottages on a bicycle trip across Illinois with a stop-off at the governor's mansion. Wound up on TV and all this stuff with these kids. I have one of my favorite pictures is it shows when they arrived back in Quincy, they were biked all the way down to the river.
Mm-hmm.
And I met them at the river, and this young black girl gets off her bike and she runs over and gives me the biggest hug. And it just so happened that the photographer, who is Linda at that time, snapped the picture right at that moment.
I'm sure that's a great picture.
Oh, and the look on her face is just of the girl's face. Anyway, so Jenny herself was a bikeist, and she did the Rack Bry across Iowa every year. But she had a saying, don't live in a should house. Don't live in a should house. And think of all the shoulds you try to meet. Other people's expectations. And a lot of them self-given. So you can rebel against yourself. I'm not going to go there. Not going to do that. Not going to organize my life that way. It's not about pleasure or pain. It's about peace, inner peace.
It's awesome.
Yeah, well, that's what I've learned. And I'm a goofy guy. I love words. And Gallo wine, which is a horrible wine, used to have a motto that said, "We shall serve no wine before it's time." Well, I took that to say, "I shall solve no problem before it's time." So, anyway, one of the things I do is I like quotes. I like to organize my brain around this too shall pass, and easy does it. And so that's all I got.
Is there a poem you'd like to share for the last poem, or is there anything else?
Let me see.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
What was amazing?
That whole story, man. Everything you had to say.
Well, you're a good listener. That's why. Yeah, you're different than I thought you would be. Because I first saw you when you were checking out at Hy-Vee, a checkout guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But you're much more easygoing, laid back, and more engaging. I mean, obviously, you really listen. See if I can find this. I'm not going to read you this poem. I'll let you read it, but it's a poem. Now listen to this. I got to thinking, my granddaughter is 5. 13 years till she's 18. I'll be 82 in 2 weeks. 13 years, 95. Nobody in my family's ever lived to be 95. Chances are I'm not going to be around. So I wrote a poem. Do you know me, Juliana? For a granddaughter at 18 from her paternal grandfather. I asked Jessica and Nathan to each give her a copy of that poem when she turns 18. One thing I learned as a counselor was, and it came from Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, he said neuroses is the avoidance of legitimate suffering. Now, if you wanted to suffer, you're nuts. But if you're willing to, that's a different issue. So much of the fucked upness in our lives, the booze, the jumping from one relationship or one job or one location to another, shutting people out, letting too many people in, is all because of trying to avoid suffering. And once you, for the Buddhism, right? Siddhartha was the founder, he was Buddha.
Okay.
He was raised in aristocracy in India. And when he became a young man, he had traveled widely, and he was really saddened by all the suffering and poverty he saw all around him. And so he decided to study, and then he discovered it wasn't just poverty. He met wealthy people who were unhappy. And and so he finally got to the heart of it. It was summarized in one sentence. The person who does not crave does not suffer. I think it gets to a regret that I have. It's the only true major life regret I have, and it is a genuine, irreconcilable regret. I can do nothing about it. And please don't repeat this in your own life, knowing in your own life. Fortunately, my son is the exact opposite, and I'm glad. I talked to you about that person in St. Louis, the psychiatrist. When I left St. Louis, I never had another contact with him. No, he was in his 70s then. Friends. I had two teachers in high school one of whom even took my poetry over to Washington University School of Literature and took it there. And I did visit him and his wife, who was a teacher too. When I got out of the service a couple of times, but then I let it go. My regret is people who I really cared about, who actually did things for me. I moved on from them. And there's nothing I can do about it because they're dead now. 21-year-old, I would say savor those people. Savor them. Do not let them go. Always let them know. Those two teachers from my high school who thought I had great talent never heard one poem of mine after I left school. They would have been thrilled to have heard it. So yeah, that's probably the only. Now, Linda, I said, Linda, what would you have me, as Steve, say at 21? And she was being serious and not funny. And she wasn't putting me down. She said, I would figure out how to save more money than you did. And she's right. I didn't even tell you, in 1968, I wound up, listen to this. So I'm a second semester junior at IU, Indiana University. I'm in the honors program in English literature. 5 people, 40,000 students, and I'm in a classroom with 5 people, with a full professor who has taught, she's on sabbatical from Yale University. So she's just there. And she says to me, to my face, right in my face, she says, Steve, in my 30 years of teaching, I have never found a student as talented as you are. Went right over my head. So learning to savor what you have. and make money along the way.
That's great advice.